What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Mass Media Hysteria. My name is Court. I will be your host for the duration. With me, as always, is Chris.
How's it going, everyone?
And down below, making his triumphant return to the show, is Andris.
Howdy.
And today is June the 6th. We are going to be talking about the following topics today. Let me consult my notes because we got a bunch. That's the wrong app. I'm really on my game today. So there's a trailer for an upcoming documentary about the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Anthony Bourdain, a man I love very much. We will get into that. We're going to talk about Andy Muschietti, who is the director of the upcoming Flash movie, put out a photograph on his Instagram account. As we all know, Michael Keaton will be showing up as Batman in that movie, reprising his role. Pretty cool little image. We're going to talk about that. Then the three of us are going to do our full spoilers review of the Conjuring. Technically, it's Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. If you want to skip that and just watch a non-spoiler review, that's up on my channel. I'll link that up there somewhere. So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about the first episode of the new Netflix series, Sweet Tooth. And then we have a discussion that we're going to have. Andris, do you want to tell us what this discussion is all about?
Yes, today's discussion is going to be about found footage films.
All right. So as always, we just want to say we thank you guys for watching. We hope you'll consider hitting the like button, hitting subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. It just, it helps the channel grow. It helps the video get out there. We appreciate that very much. And of course, if you're not always down to watch a 90-minute YouTube video, you can find our podcast on some podcasting services such as Spotify, Google Podcasts. We're working to get some more. So go check that out if that tickles your fancy. All right, intro done. So the first thing we're going to talk about is that the trailer, it came out a couple days ago for a film, and the full title is Roadrunner, a film about Anthony Bourdain. This is a documentary about the man. I don't know, but well, I think Chris, you said you were a fan of the man.
Mm-hmm, I am.
Andris?
I don't hate him.
Okay.
He's a nice man.
There you go.
So I was a big fan. I actually got the chance to see him live in Toronto a number of years ago. That was great. I read Kitchen Confidential. That was awesome. I read A Cook's Tour. I watched a bunch of his shows. Really big fan. Very, very sad when he passed away and the circumstances surrounding his passing. There is a moment in this trailer, and I'll get your guys sort of overall thoughts on it in a second. There's a moment right at the beginning of this trailer where Anthony Bourdain is narrating it. Obviously, they're using like older audio clips. But the first line in the trailer is something along the lines of, "This isn't going to end well." And of course, we all remember how his life ended, and it was not well. I will say, though, I love this trailer, and I'm very psyched for this movie. Andris, let me ask you first. What did you think about this trailer?
It looks very interesting. I mean, Anthony Bourdain was a very cultured, interesting man. I think they should replace the Dos Equis guy with him in memorial because he's the most interesting man. And it's going to be a very interesting look at the man behind the products and shows and things that he did.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I didn't even know this was coming around the corner until you mentioned the trailer. Like you said, I think before we started, this is a documentary directed by Morgan Neville, who did Won't You Be My Neighbor just a couple years ago, which is another fantastic documentary. So it looks like it's in good hands, and the trailer itself was good. It I think hit a really great balance of kind of remembering Anthony Bourdain for kind of the legendary status that he had, and he really did lead a truly extraordinary life. Like, he's been all over the world, tried every possible kind of food that you can imagine. He's done so many things. He lived a hell of a life. And of course, as you kind of hinted on, Court, when he passed away, it was because he took his own life. And it's kind of that taboo of depression that isn't fully seen in media too often, where it's depression isn't what it looks like in films. It's not, you know, you're just crying every day. You can't do this, can't do that. It kind of just kind of lingers with you. It's this dark cloud that hangs over you, where even where someone like Anthony Bourdain that can live an extraordinary life and do everything that he wants to do, he couldn't get out from underneath that cloud. And the film seems to kind of touch on that a little bit. Like, I don't know how deeply it's going to go into his depression, but I don't think it's something that could be avoided. I only bring that up because, like I said, I think it's a good balance. The trailer makes it seem like it's not focused entirely about the sad parts of his life. It really is sort of a celebration of his life. And for anybody that's seen any of his programs, like Parts Unknown, this looks like it's going to be a treat for you. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's definitely one of the most entertaining travel shows out there.
Yeah, his shows are amazing. Like I mentioned, I've read a couple of his books, and one thing I always appreciated about Anthony Bourdain is that era, like when he was still on Food Network before he moved over to I don't know, one of those travel channels or something. Mm-hmm. You know, everyone on Food Network at the time were so just like, it felt like such a corporate product. And not that I disliked a lot of those shows. Bam, I met Emerald, I signed my book, but there was something about Anthony Bourdain that felt so real, in that he smoked and he swore and he talked about his history being a heroin junkie, and like there was just something so like visceral about the guy. And I remember there's a passage in I think it's in Kitchen Confidential where he's talking about he's in a cab with three of his like junkie buddies, and they're taking a cab to go score heroin. And he had read in the newspaper that day, like 1 in 4 heroin junkies will survive. And then he writes, as of this writing, I'm the only one left alive, like of those 4 guys. And it's just like, wow. You don't get that from Rachel Ray. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I love this guy. Like you said, Chris, the fact that it's being directed by Morgan Neville, who did the Mr. Rogers documentary, that seems great to me. And I believe, I don't remember, I think it said it was HBO Max. I'm not certain of that, but it looks like it's coming out on July 16th. So it's not too long to wait. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to it. So yeah. I don't think there's much else really to cover there. It was a trailer for a documentary, but yeah. So yeah, let's move on.
That's good.
So our second topic today, of course, is Andy Muschietti put up a picture on his Instagram. And of course, I'll edit this in later, but it is, and there was no caption. It's a close-up shot of the old school Michael Keaton Batsymbol, like on his chest, with a big splotch of blood on it. And I will say, I did notice that the symbol, and if you look at sort of the little bit of the armor of like the pecs and the abs that you can see, definitely more of the Batman Returns suit, because the Batman suit and the Batman Returns suit were a little bit different.
Yes.
I personally like the original one better, but whatever, it makes sense chronologically. So Andris, I blindsided you with this just yesterday.
Yes, you did.
What was I had put it in the chat earlier, but I guess you missed it. What was your initial impression of seeing that image?
As you said, it's definitely from Returns, because the biggest difference between the two suits that people might not know is the symbol itself. In the first one, you've got the Returns one. In the very first one, there were these two little black feet. At the bottom.
Yeah. I'm backwards. Mirrors. Fuck. So yeah, like close. Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the Returns, it's not present because they're like, that's weird. So it looks better. The other major difference, sorry to interrupt, but the other major difference is like the musculature on his like chest plate. Yeah.
In Batman, it looks like muscles. In Batman Returns, it looks like armor.
Yeah. Which I feel that was a good revision personally, because it was like, all right, cool. More tactical, more, but yeah, no, it's interesting. We're wondering what the blood's about. A lot of people are mentioning that it looks like a visual nod to Watchmen, which is like, okay, what's
I can kind of see that with the happy face with the splotch of blood.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's interesting. Props to Warner for doing something ambitious, like bringing back previous Batmen. Because it used to be like once you brought a new one in, that was it. You never saw the previous ones again. And now it's like, right. Oh, Keaton's returning. Maybe George Clooney will return.
Maybe. Chris, what did you think when you first saw that image?
To be honest, the very first thought that I had was I was confused because it looked like just like raspberry or strawberry jam on him. I'm sure that it's just like because of it, they had a kind of harsh spotlight on it. And I'm not making a joke. I honestly was like, what, did someone just like spill a jelly donut on it? But of course, it's
eating a donut.
It looks a little glossy, but it's blood, so which is cool. For a number of reasons. I mean, I think that there's been sort of a resurgence and appreciation for the original two Michael Keaton Batman films. I think that, you know, all three of us were pretty heavy, obviously, online when it comes to like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight coming out.
Oh, yeah.
And there was sort of like this feeling at the time that like, this is the real Batman. Everything else, you know, Michael Keaton, that was cool, but this is the real shit. But now it seems like there's like I said, there's a growth and appreciation for those original two Michael Keaton films again, which I think is great because they're very fun, they're stylistic, and in contrast to the Nolan films, they're so, to reuse the same word, they're so stylish. There's sort of like this fantasy element to it that I love being associated with Batman. The thing that also interests me is the fact that there is a blood on the Batsymbol. Although 1989's Batman and then Batman Returns was pretty dark from Tim Burton, it wasn't, you know, it was PG-13, and I'm assuming this is going to be PG-13 as well, but you know, it was like dark for the time, but it wasn't, I don't remember them getting into like these really big bloody fisticuffs. Like I remember Jack Nicholson had kind of a bit of blood at the end after Batman punched him, but just to seeing blood splattered on the Batsymbol, it makes me wonder how violent this older aged Bruce Wayne is going to be. So I'm interested to see Michael Keaton back. I love him in everything that he does. He's great. So I'm interested to see what his interpretation of a older, more grizzled Bruce Wayne is.
So let me ask you, I'll pose this question to the both of you. Is that Bruce's blood or somebody else's?
That's someone else's. That's some thug that he just taught a lesson, I think.
He was shaving and he nicked and he was like, "Oh no, I have to go change."
He was shaving in his suit. It's like, "Oh yeah, I'll save time, Alfred."
It's like 5 o'clock shadow.
Bat shadow.
Yeah, for me, I'm of the mind that it's someone else's simply because, you know, the only place where blood would come out, because he's wearing the suit, the only place is like here, and then it would fall and it would have like a downward, because I'm a forensics expert, a sort of downward drippy thing. It looks like it's been splashed on him. Now, the other thing is I've seen people online speculating that maybe this suggests that Batman will die. I absolutely don't think that, but Andris, let me ask you first. What do you think of that theory?
No, that's crazy. It would be crazy of them. Also, if it were Bruce's blood, Keaton's Bruce's blood, that's like, oh, hey, look how weak he is. He's bleeding already, you know? It's like, I don't think they're going to, that's, you know, I wouldn't, no.
Chris?
I suppose it's not outside the realm of possibility that his Bruce Wayne dies in the movie, but I don't think that this picture is an indicator of that. You know, I think it's, you know, it's not uncommon to see Batman's suit with a little bit of blood on it. He's a very violent martial arts expert. So even if hypothetically at the end of the film, this Bruce Wayne does kick the bucket, I don't think that Andy Muschietti was giving it away that early. Like what, like a year and a half in advance?
No. That's like, that's like House of Wax when they did that remake and they were like, Paris Hilton will die. They're not doing that here. So
yeah, I mean, I think this image is actually a direct indicator that he's not going to die, because you're really going to spoil that in like one of the first things you put out while you're like shooting the movie. That makes no sense to me.
Not just that, this would be the first one. I don't think they're going to be like, hey, welcome back, bye. I think they'd want to, you know, because there's going to be interest in this. I feel like they're going to, you know, want to bring Keaton back for at least 1 more, 2 more.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
I actually kind of think his role in this is going to be really small. I think he's probably going to have like a couple of scenes.
Yeah.
Like I think Flash is going to be jumping between different like timelines or whatever. And at one point he's going to end up with Michael Keaton's Batman. They're going to have to beat up some people and then he's going to be off. I'm guessing it's going to be 1 or 2 scenes. I got nothing to base that on, but
yeah, I hope it's a little more than that. I also was not expecting a major role because this is the Flash movie, and they also talked about how Ben Affleck, Jesus Christ, Ben Affleck is going to be in this as well. So it's going to be Ezra Miller's Flash, kind of jumping from different timelines. So it's really not the Batman and Flash movie. It's the Flash. So I wasn't expecting a big role, but man, I do hope that it's more than just like 2 scenes. Like I hope that we get something solid with Barry Allen and Bruce Wayne, and then we get like a solid sequence with the Flash and Batman.
Yeah.
Because in the last year at the DC Fandom, they released like a concept art image, and it looks like both the Flash in costume and Batman in costume squaring up to some dudes. So I'm like, yeah, you got to give us like them fighting side by side. There's no way that it's just going to be like, oh, hey, we ran into Michael Keaton that's just sitting in a chair. Okay, bye. Like they're going to show, I mean, obviously this image proved it. They're going to show us Batman proper, which is cool. So even if it's a small role, I'm still stoked.
Mm-hmm. All right. I was going to ask, the Ben Affleck being in it, was that ever confirmed? I don't remember. I remember they were talking about it. Do you remember if they ever confirmed it?
I thought it was.
Okay.
I was pretty. Let me see. Sorry.
That does seem right to me, but I have a terrible memory.
Because I feel like they've talked about it and like I think he's talked about it, but IMDb says yes. Okay.
All right. So let's move on now. We're going to do, again, our full spoilers review of The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Court, in editing, remember, if you guys want to skip this review and you don't want to be spoiled, I'll put a time code up on the screen nowish and just skip to that time and you won't get spoiled. So again, this Conjuring movie I'm not sure how many there are in total in the Conjuring universe, because you have the spin-offs like The Nun, the 2 Annabelle movies.
There's 8.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
La Llorona, which I did see. La Llorona, I think, is the only one aside from this franchise that I've seen. And I didn't love it.
No.
I've heard the first couple Conjurings are actually quite good. Now I kind of want to go check them out because I like James Wan as a filmmaker. But apparently this one was directed by Michael Chavez, who's the guy who did La Llorona. I will say I think this movie is better than that one. I really didn't like that. Andris, you're a big horror guy. I'm going to throw it to you first. What were your overall impressions of this movie?
I had no idea what The Conjuring was until now. Okay. I liked it. I watched the first 2 before this because I wanted to see what was going on. Overall, I like the franchise. I'm also like a lifelong paranormal fan, and it's fascinating because for me, this is a treat because they're taking real cases. They're taking Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are like pioneering paranormal investigators, and they're taking these cases. They do take them in directions. There was a lot of consulting Wikipedia to see where they were, diverting to make a movie, but it's fascinating. It's interesting. I also appreciated that they took this one in a different direction because you can make 15 haunted house films, but this was like, hey, what else did, so it's not the house that's the focus or the hauntings, it's Ed and Lorraine Warren's experiences. That's the focus, which I feel is a good way to go.
Okay. You went to a little Christopher Walken there. Good way to go.
Wow.
Chris, what did you think?
For this third one, I wasn't really a big fan of it. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's awful by any means. It's certainly the weakest out of the 3. Yeah. There are things that I did like about it, and I'll go into it. But overall, I think it was just kind of forgettable for me. Okay,
I'm kind of there with you. There were things that I did like about it. I thought visually it looked really good. Yeah. I thought the acting was really solid across the board. Again, this kid, I believe his name is Julian Hilliard. Haunting of Hill House, WandaVision. Now this, I like this kid. He's good. One of my biggest drawbacks was that I didn't find this movie scary at all. Mm-hmm. Had a couple of like well executed jump scares, and I said in the other review, one one issue I have with movies that are heavy on jump scares is for me anyway, I find that I can almost always pinpoint exactly when the scare is going to come. Like I can just go like, and it'll be there. Michael Chavez in this movie, I felt dragged them out a little bit longer than I would have expected, like an extra second or two. So it did kind of catch me off guard. I did like that about it. Overall, yeah, I thought it was okay. Like you said, Chris, for me, fairly forgettable. It's not something I'll ever watch again. But I guess let's start off. One thing I did like is the opening of the movie. It really kind of throws you in. It's 1981, and this kid is, basically this kid is in his house, and they've called a priest, and there's going to be an exorcism. And there's that sequence where he runs and hides in the washroom. I thought, like in the bathtub, I thought that was really creepy. Did you guys, that short sequence there, did that work for you guys?
Shall I?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. The opening sequence worked for me, and it didn't work for me because from a pacing standpoint, I felt like there was just like 20 minutes of a film that were missing. I was like, whoa, what's happening? Wait, what? It was a little disorienting, especially because the previous films, they're very chronological.
Mm-hmm.
And this one just jumps right into here comes the exorcism.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it was creepy. It was well executed, and like you said, he's good visually. The director, he's very good at doing the horror thing. And those are my thoughts.
Chris?
On one hand, it started off with a bang. Like the movie really kicked off the story, and it really kicked off with a lot of stuff happening at once. But I found none of it to be scary, either in this opening or throughout the film. I found the film, I said to my wife, profoundly not scary. Like
Right.
even the jump scares I thought were quite weak. And I'm not even a big fan of jump scares, but I mean, a loud noise out of nowhere is going to make pretty much anyone jump. And I remember with the first film, which I do quite like, the first Conjuring, there were some solid jump scares, and it kind of kept you on your toes. And I think James Wan is better at delivering those, where he is better at kind of bait and switches, where he sets something up and you think it's going to, like, oh, the ghost is going to come from there, or it's going to happen here. And then he slightly diverts your expectations. Here, if Michael Chavez, it felt very predictable. You're like, oh, it's gonna come here, and it's gonna come now, and it does, and it just didn't lead to anything. But also, this kind of horror never really works for me, like on a level of it being quite large and over the top. An exorcism scene where everything is flying and the kid is doing gymnastics and people are screaming. Yeah. Special effects don't really scare me. I mean, like, good makeup effect can, subtle kind of practical effects. I'm not going to try and shit on CG entirely, but when it's really overblown, it doesn't scare me. This is going to sound blasphemous, but the original Poltergeist, I liked that movie quite a bit, but even as a kid, I never found it scary because it just felt more like a showcase for special effects of the time, as opposed to like, oh, these are really terrifying and I believe it. And so, yeah, I think that simultaneously the opening started off with a bang, but it was also a sour note for me. Okay. And then it never really picked up from there.
Yeah, I did find that, again, mostly I really like this movie from a visual standpoint, but like the sequence towards the end when stuff starts getting really hairy and the kid, I think his name was David, starts contorting and all that. Like that was very clearly CG, and it didn't look that good. Mm-hmm. I feel like, why not just get a contortionist and maybe just don't show their face, or maybe CGI the face on, but like at least it would have looked a little bit more tactile. I did kind of appreciate it. Made me laugh out loud when the exorcist first shows up.
Yeah,
there's a shot of him outside the house, like back to the camera looking. I was like, okay, that's the poster of the exorcist. Like it's
like, just start playing that eerie piano theme while you're at it.
Yeah, it's the most iconic image from the most iconic exorcist film. You know, like you can't top that 1973 classic. So it's like, it was cute, little on the nose. I don't know, I didn't mind it.
A little.
that's the
It
thing.
was
Is
very
like,
much on the nose. Yeah.
that's the thing. I mean, like, you're making a movie about an exorcism. I understand that you want to put like some kind of nod to the fucking daddy of them all.
Uh-huh.
But like the image from the poster, come on, do something like a little bit more subtle.
So like have a can of pea soup in the background of the
Right.
kitchen, like nobody draws attention to it or anything. But yeah.
There was a moment very early on where I think it's when Lorraine goes to visit Ed in the hospital because he had that heart attack, and you hear over the intercom, you hear someone say like, Dr. Merrick, please report to something. And I was like, I wonder if that was like a really subtle nod to Father Marin. Maybe not. Merrick is a name, but I don't know. Yeah. Because I'd already seen the image from the poster of The Exorcist, I guess I had it on the brain. But like, that's a nice subtle way to do it. Even say Dr. Marin, you know, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that image, like, I laughed out loud. I thought that was really funny.
So did I. I did too. I was just like, oh, okay, come on.
So we basically find out that so David's older sister has a boyfriend who's obviously really in with the family. They're all really good together. And again, The Exorcist, he's when the kid is in full demon mode, he grabs the kid and says to the demon, like, take me, which is Father Karras.
Yeah.
So then the rest of the movie is sort of this demon sort of occasionally possessing this guy Arnie. It sort of comes and goes, as you do when you're a demon, I suppose. And
he's got places to go. He's got to go, you know, meet with his buddies and share demon possession stories.
Mm-hmm.
I love just, I didn't even make this connection, but for any of you watching, when Chris set up this Zoom meeting, I didn't even connect it to the fact that we were talking about The Conjuring, but the first three numbers in the password were 666, and now we're talking about demons. I love it. But yeah, so Arnie is occasionally possessed. He ends up sort of, he's with his girlfriend and their drunk buddy, and the drunk buddy's trying to like dance with the girlfriend, and she doesn't really want to. And then seemingly Arnie is seeing this guy attack the girlfriend, but we keep seeing it from other perspectives where that's not happening. It's kind of like he's hallucinating, ends up stabbing the guy, killing the guy, gets arrested. And so enter Ed and Lorraine Warren. And there's some connection to, and I did find that the plot of this movie got like unnecessarily convoluted, but there's a connection to another girl who disappeared. So they go on like a full on like fetch quest side mission to like another state, because they have to find out what happened to the girl and find them. And Lorraine's, she's using her sort of psychic abilities to figure it all out. And
based on a true story.
Right. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but that scene where she's like running because she thinks she's the girl in her own head. She's running and she like falls off the cliff, and Ed grabs her at the last second. Is it just me, or was that like really bad green screening? There was a shot looking down, and I was like, that does not look good at all.
Yeah,
I think so. I can't remember it because it was so fast and so much information was being thrown at you. It was like it was an overload.
Right.
It was, I think the reveal, because it started out in the dark and then it was like boom, light. I think the reveal worked. We're like, oh crap, she's over a cliff. But then there's like a little bit of like, they kind of linger where like she's standing on the edge, then Patrick Wilson rocks up, and then like a hand grabs her and pulls her and all of that looked really, really fake. I'm like, you are so not anywhere near that cliff right now.
Right. One thing, you know, I keep talking about the visual aspect of this movie, and one thing that I really liked about it was the way they would transition from light to dark. You know, and so like in the scene where Arnie is hallucinating with his drunk buddy. There's a moment where it just, the whole room goes pitch black and everyone's gone, and it just like visually it looked really, really good.
Yeah, it's because it wasn't just like a cut. It was just like you saw the lights just go down.
Right.
It was really well, like it was a good choice on their part, because it was more visually interesting than like dark.
Right.
Yeah. It was like a visual representation of, you were seeing this demon clouding his visual, or you know, his eyeballs with demon hallucinations.
Yeah, I think the visuals and the direction were one of the highlights of this, especially compared to Michael Chavez's previous film, which was not very good. I thought that the direction was pretty competent. I think if I were to watch all three of the Conjuring movies in order and didn't know that there was a change in directors, I think I would have pegged it. But at the same time, it's not like this major drop in visual quality. Like you said, the lighting, the cinematography all looks really good, and it still looks like a Conjuring film. So yeah, I think that was one of the things that I thought was good throughout the cinematography and the lighting.
Okay. Another thing I want to bring up is we get introduced to John Noble's character. I love John Noble. He, of course, was Denethor, Steward of Gondor. And I don't know if you guys know this, but he was also Scarecrow in Batman Arkham Knight. He was amazing as Scarecrow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
did not know that.
He's got such a creepy voice. But we're introduced to him as this sort of like old priest who's collected, you know, these sort of demonic artifacts, and they go to him for information. And for me, I mean, okay, here's the big spoiler. We find out at the end of the movie that all this stuff that's happening is being controlled by a witch who's casting these spells because she like promised a demon to get him 3 souls or something. I don't know. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But as soon as we're introduced to John Noble, you know, they go to him for like a fact-finding mission, and he's just like, I don't know, whatever. And immediately I'm like, okay, well, you don't get John Noble, you don't get Denethor, Steward of Gondor, to be like, here's a book, read this, that'll help you figure it out. Like, obviously this guy's coming back, and it's going to be a major twist. And of course we find out that he is the father of this witch, and he did his best to try and make her a good person, but it didn't work. And I hated that twist. How did you guys feel about it?
There was nothing. Go ahead, Andris.
No, go ahead.
I mean, it was one of those things where I think I just was not invested in the story at all, that I wasn't second, how do I say it? I wasn't a step ahead of it because I wasn't trying to figure it out. So when it was revealed, to me, it was very much like, well, I guess that might as well happen, you know, make it at least like, okay, this character we met before, he has some sort of connection to the main villain that we rarely see. I mean, the reveal itself didn't stick out to me much in my mind. Just what the reveal was about, like the whole witchcraft thing, that I have a lot of thoughts on, and I really didn't like.
Okay. Andris?
I was so busy trying to figure out, like, I wanted to Wikipedia this actual case, because I was like, how far are we diverting at this point? That's what was like distracting me, because I'm like, is this how this happened? Or because, you know, you're like, as you guys said, based on a true story, but it's like, well, how much of this is the true story, and are we just out in some mystery now? My theory, they didn't have that much for this case, so they were like scratching their heads, and they're like, well, there were witches in the first one, all witch, let's do this, you know. And I was too busy being like, so wait, what, you know, I that's what I was busy distracted with, and I had to fight my phone because I was like, no, do not read it, don't look at the case, don't, just focus on the whatever's happening on the screen, please, young man.
I mean, as a guy who, you know, I don't believe in ghosts and possession and all that kind of stuff, which is why a lot of times these types of movies don't affect me all that much anyway, because to me it just feels kind of like malarkey. But that's a word I don't get to use very often.
Malarkey.
President
Getting
Biden
older,
over here.
Court. Yeah.
Yep. But like the movie, I think, Chris, you kind of pointed this out. The movie really did kind of go out of its way a little bit to push this is a true story thing. And, you know, because they had the sort of titles at the end, and Arnie actually went to jail, and I'm just like, yeah, I mean, for me, and I didn't look it up afterwards because I was just kind of done with it, but I'm sure there was like a guy, this Arnie guy, who killed this other dude and used demonic possession as his like defense.
Well, this is the interesting thing. Allegedly, the first, like the establishing events, the exorcism that happened with the little kid David, the demon going into Arnie killing his landlord, I guess that was his landlord, that actually happened. And then the case
Okay.
did happen. He did go to jail. But everything else, it's like there's so little detail out there that it's like, I don't know, you know, it's just like, it's distracting.
Right.
Yeah, this is my biggest complaint with it is it's twofold. It kind of trying to be this talking about a true story. On one hand, it's so clearly not. Like there's, you know, there was, like Andres said, there was the Warrens in the family reported initially, like, okay, this little kid started off, we thought that he was possessed, and then the Warrens came over and they were trying to get approval from the church for priests to have an exorcism, because you actually have to ask you just can't call a priest and they just show up and do it.
I learned
And
that from Exorcist 3.
Exactly. There you go. And essentially where the story ends in real life pretty much is that the guy Arnie Johnson killed this guy named Bono. That's his real name. He originally tried to plead for not guilty by reason of demonic possession. The court was like, there's no fucking way that we could ever possibly prove that. And then they were like, okay, well, he was drunk and it was self-defense. And that was it. And so that's why it bothers me so much, is that the first Conjuring movie, that took place in like a farmhouse, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And it felt, you know, it got supernatural and stuff, but it was not so over the top that when it says based on a true story, you could feel like, okay, it happened to like a small family in this one house. Who knows what happened there? Kind of similar to the second one, even though that one got more media attention.
Oh, yeah.
But this third one, the second one was about, I forget the name of it, but it was a famous case.
It's the Enfield
exactly.
poltergeist.
It's very famous in England.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Again, the reason why I think those two didn't bother me, because I'm also not religious. I don't believe in kind of the spiritual stuff. But the reason why the first two didn't bother me is because I asked myself sort of like, okay, what's the worst thing if this is just made up bullshit? You know, this family lied. There's nothing really bad about it. It's just like, okay, these people said their house was haunted by ghosts for attention. Okay, cool. But this third one feels morally icky to me, because Arnie Johnson is a convicted murderer and he killed a real person. And the whole reason why this got media attention, because he made the idiotic claim of reason of demonic possession that got thrown out immediately and was never brought up again. And the fact that this movie is sort of kind of what is it? It's sort of condoning this BS alibi that the guy himself even threw out and just recanted as just like, this is a fact. And also the guy that he killed, well, he was an abusive, drunken asshole. So he kind of had it coming. It felt very morally kind of like, this is kind of messed up. This is no longer just like, oh, people say that their house is haunted. This is you essentially being like, no, this guy, this murderer, he's innocent entirely. Right. It's like, that's kind of fucked up.
Well, they also paint him as like a super guy, right? Which maybe he was, I don't know, but yeah, I absolutely see your point there. Do you guys have any like final thoughts? Do you want to share any other specific things you want to talk about, or shall we just get to would you or would you not recommend it? What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Thinking.
Oh, God.
Oh, no, I'm thinking.
While you're thinking, I was just going to say that, yeah, I think overall it's not really scary. It's not very engaging at all. Like the story is kind of convoluted and it's not a good mystery. You're really not like, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, what's going on with this witch? The other thing I was going to say is that, like Andres mentioned, everything that happened within the first 10 minutes was reported. It was reported, and you could look it up in newspaper articles from the time, yada, yada. But everything after is just bullshit. And if it's bullshit, even from like the reports of the Warrens, where there was never this weird duel between them and a witch that did this and that. Also, again, how I mentioned how the first film was like, oh, here's some supernatural elements happening in an in a house in the middle of nowhere. Who knows what happens? But the end of this film has the most over the top exorcism scene of a dude floating in a prison hospital with glass exploding and things, blah, blah, blah. And there's like 10 people, witnesses behind them, like guards and hospital workers. And it's like, why did none of them come forward? Why, if you're positing that this had witnesses, then why did they just throw out the demonic possession thing? Don't you think you would have 10 people being like, I saw that fucker levitate? It doesn't address that, because the screenwriters know this is bullshit. And look, I know that we know many movies do the based on a true story thing, but they don't try to make the audience feel like idiots. Like Fargo says based on a true story. It's not. But they don't have people flying around the goddamn room. They don't have like weird supernatural things. The witch woman apparently is as fast as the Flash, because she can like teleport from one side of the room to the next to kill her father. It's garbage. I mean, just that element of it, not the entire movie, but that element of like based on a true story.
Yeah.
You go screw yourself. That's ridiculous.
I also did like towards the end. So, you know, Ed gets, I guess, possessed or whatever, and is going after Lorraine. And he's got a sledgehammer, and it was right out of The Shining.
Yes,
for sure.
Oh my god!
Like the way it was shot and everything, he was all hunched over, and it was this movie's wearing its influences on its sleeve for sure.
Exactly.
That is a problem with all of the Conjuring films, though. They all do these very obvious, like in the second Conjuring film, they're trying to get into this house to save this person, or there's this little girl, and like this guy, one of the people, he takes an axe and he's chopping a door open, and I'm just like, here's Johnny, you know. Right. It's just like, we get it, you like Stanley Kubrick, goddamn.
Right. All right, well, I guess, you know, I was gonna say, should we do recommendations, but we just did a spoiler review, so I figure anyone who's watching this
will either agree or disagree and say, no, you guys, this was well written.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you feel that way, that's cool. If you feel that way, we don't agree, though.
So let's move on. We'll talk about, got a little bit of time left here. We're going to talk about the first episode of the new Netflix series, Sweet Tooth, which is, it's from Warner Brothers. I believe it's based on a graphic novel series. I'm not certain of that, but I think I read that. The first, of course, all the episodes are streaming now, but we all watched the first one, which was called Out of the Deep Woods. Chris, I'm going to start with you because you had some choice words about this when you were watching it the other night. So why don't you give us your overall impression?
Well, when I made the wise decision on my part to kind of put this off and watch it on a different day. I don't know what was going on. Maybe it's just because it was right after watch the Conjuring, so I really didn't like that, and had a bit to drink. But for some reason, the opening was just irritating me. I think it was what I was complaining about is that it started off.
And we should say we're going to spoil this episode.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Spoilers.
That's my bad. That's on me.
That's right. It just starts off with like, oh my God, pandemic, people are dying wearing masks in hospitals. And I'm like, I'm not interested in this kind of fiction at the moment. I'm sure some people are. That's cool. I literally just got my shots a couple of weeks ago. I'm just kind of entering back into the world. I don't need a fictional narrative to live vicariously through, of like, I wonder what it's like to be in a pandemic. or you know what I mean? I think it takes some time before you can kind of have like retrospectives of like, you remember 2020 and how much that sucks. So I feel like, I don't know when they started filming this, but I feel like the majority of the production had to have been done within the last year. It at the very least in post-production. So I felt a bit on the nose. Anyway, I was pissy with it. So I stopped, and then I rewatched it the other day with a better mentality. And it was okay. I told Andris this, like, I really honestly don't have much to say about this. I only watched the first episode. It was well done. It was well produced. It looked good. Well acted, well shot, directed, but that was about it. I found the most interesting thing about the story was at the very end, you know, so kind of leading into the second episode, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of intriguing, but I don't think I'll continue watching it. I mean, if it was asked to for the show, I would, but I just don't really have that need. I'm like, okay, cool.
What about you, Andris?
Well, okay. My biggest problem with this show is its presentation is extremely indie and extremely whimsical, and I don't vibe with that style at all.
Okay.
Like, I'm not a fan. There's like a little folksy song in the ending, and I'm like, plus it had Will Forte in it. I already told you guys earlier, I'm not a Will Forte fan. I didn't like him in SNL. I didn't like whenever he showed up in Tim and Eric. Great show, wonderful job. Damn it, I fucked it up. Oh well. Tim and Eric, I've never liked Will Forte, and in this, the moment I realized it was Will Forte, I said, and then he died, and I was like, yay. And then,
well, I'm a big enough Will Forte fan for the both of us, so it's okay.
well, okay. But yeah, the only thing I took away from it was I liked the direction, and I was like, if they took this director and they gave him a Fallout show, he would be the perfect person to direct Fallout, because he's got a very good eye visually. And I was getting Fallout vibes even a little bit. Obviously, it's not, but yeah,
yeah. I mean, for me, I liked it, I guess, enough that I'm curious to watch another episode. I'm not super in. I liked Will Forte in it. I love Will Forte. Last Man on Earth was great. Nobody watched it. It got canceled, but I loved it. I like it when he's doing slightly more dramatic stuff. I haven't seen him do too much, but it's nice to see him sort of branch out in that direction. I thought the kid who played Gus was pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Visually, like you were saying, Andris, the show is very, very lush. There are those shots of them in like the field of flowers, and the colors just like really, really pop. I like that. With you on the soundtrack, though, all that like folksy stuff, just it felt a little bit too hokey. Like we're just absolutely trying to tug on our heartstrings when like nothing heartstringy's really happened yet, because they did that right from the get-go.
Yeah.
I also thought some of the visual effects, particularly in the cold open where you see all the mayhem on the streets, I thought a lot of that didn't look very good. The helicopter crashes and all that. I did go ahead.
There was, I don't know if you guys caught it, but in the beginning, when all hell is breaking loose and the doctor is trying to get his wife to the hospital, the visuals were like, it was like a blue tinted Dawn of the Dead 2004.
Okay.
With the helicopter and the pristine neighborhood with the fire and the mayhem. It was, very evocative of.
There was that
Dawn
one shot showing the like suburban street that did look very Dawn of the Dead. Now that you mentioned it,
Dawn of the Dead. Yeah.
Interesting.
Carry on. Yeah.
I will say I did like that little mini story of the doctor going to work every day, and as the sort of sickness is progressing, and then the wife getting sick. I thought that was a nice little kind of mini story that I found myself emotionally kind of invested in, even though it was only 5 minutes long or whatever.
I'm sure they'll be bringing him back in later episodes. They've got to. They established him as a character,
Yeah, well, I think the I think the narrator even says like this is not where their story ends, and then it sort of pivots to the kid.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the guy at the end, right? The big man.
No, the doctor at the beginning.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. I mixed it up, but I think you guys are right, because when it shows like the previews for like on Netflix, for me at least, it has kind of like some images that it shows, and it shows him doing other stuff that was not in the first episode. So I'm like, okay, it seems like this guy's going to have a bigger part. And I'm curious. Well, I don't know. It's on Netflix, so all the episodes are released. So it's not like I have a limited chance to watch this. So maybe I'll go back to it. But yeah, I'd be interested to see kind of like what happens with his character. Is he, one of the good guys? Is he doing some kind of shady at the end, or do you think they're going to kind of pull a twist on us? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. So as we mentioned, Will Forte, who's the father of Gus, he dies. He gets sick. He dies, and then Gus, being the kid who has antlers, because they mention in this episode that they don't know if the virus caused these human animal hybrids or if it was vice versa, but this child is born with antlers and little fawn ears. It's actually very cute. But after Will Forte dies, he's thinking about going off on his own, because he's heard of like a place in Colorado where they take care of people like him. Then he gets attacked by poachers who apparently they could get a lot of money for him. And then he's saved by this person who he calls the big man. And at the end of the episode, the big man goes off, and the episode ends with Gus running after him saying, like, take me with you. I don't know if, because he did seem sort of, he's trying to help the kid, but he's also like, he's not particularly nice. And I don't know what they're going to do with that character. I do feel like I'm going to watch another episode of this thing, at least one more, because I was entertained enough, and I'm kind of curious as to where the story is going, but I'm certainly not loving it just yet.
Question for you guys. Has Netflix adopted the weekly episodic format yet, or are they still? I can't remember. Like when they did the last season of Stranger Things, were they doing it weekly, or was it all at once?
That was all at once. Something's popping out in my brain that they did something recently that was staggered, but I can't think of what it was, and I may just be wrong.
They've done it for a couple things. I haven't really seen them do it for a big sort of narrative production. This is dumb, but my wife and I like watching that Great British Bake Off. It's a really addictive show, but they release that weekly. Okay. But I can't think of like a narrative show like Stranger Things or like this where they released it staggered. It's typically been released all at once.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so I think maybe it's time to move on to our final topic of the day, unless you guys have anything else you want to add.
Sounds like a good time.
Okay. So again, we have a discussion. Andris, would you like to pose the question?
Yes. There is a genre of horror. It's been around since the 70s, technically, if you really think about it, going back to Cannibal Holocaust, because that is technically a found footage film, but with the arrival of Blair Witch Project in 1999, I believe it was, there was the hearkening of the arrival of the found footage horror genre, which it's very divisive. People don't like it. People like it. But however, sometimes you have seen a movie that you like. So, gentlemen, do you have a found footage film that you like?
Chris, you want to go first?
I do. This one, I wouldn't say it's similar to Cannibal Holocaust, but it's similar in the sense that one could argue that it's sort of like a fake documentary. But it does still follow a lot of the same stylistic choices of found footage. But it's a 1992 film from, I just want to double check, from Belgium called Man Bites Dog.
Oh,
it's a fantastic film. It's essentially a film crew that follows a serial killer, from his nightly routine going around murdering people. And it's terrific. It's a hard watch. It's very violent, very graphic. Has a very kind of dark sense of humor. It's not a comedy, but the film does have a bit of fun. The guy gets into weird situations, this serial killer, and the camera crew, it's like becomes increasingly more dangerous for them to be a part of this. It was shot on film, so it wasn't meant to look like a video camera or anything. It looks pretty it has pretty good production value. But yeah, it's a really wild ride. It's quite short, and it's startling from start to finish. There's a sequence that really always sticks out to me where the film crew's in this warehouse, and the camera crew, like the cameraman and this assistant, go off in one direction, and the sound crew go off in another direction. So you have this juxtaposition of what the sound crew is picking up that you hear is not matching what you see. So you'll see like the camera crew is just kind of getting some nice B-roll footage of a bird, or they're shooting like the nature, just a slow zoom in on this wall. And then you hear just this horrific violence that's happening to the sound crew. And then vice versa, where the camera is being chased by someone, and they're running, and it's startling, and it's horrific to look at. And then the sound crew are just like shooting the shit about like, oh, what'd you have for dinner? And it's like, I haven't really seen something like that. It's a really weird punch to the senses. So yeah, I recommend it.
Let me just jump in here. That actually reminds me, speaking of found footage, there's that moment towards the end of Blair Witch Project, the original one, that I love, they're going to find Josh, and they're in the house, and I think Mike goes to the basement and Heather's upstairs, and then so she's going to run downstairs, but he was the guy with the microphone.
Yeah.
So she's running down. So we see it from her perspective, and we hear her screaming from like far away and then her voice gets closer as she gets down to the basement. I always thought that was really cool. And I wonder if you're saying this movie was a found footage, I wonder if they did that purposefully. I have no idea.
It might be. Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a direct reference. It sounds very similar. It's been a while since I've seen the Blair Witch Project, but I do remember what you're talking about. Yeah, it's a cool little effect. I like when films kind of play with sound design like that. So yeah, if you're able to stomach some really ultra violent serial killer shit, then check out Man Bites Dog.
Okay. Andris, do you want to go next or do you want to go last?
I could go next. I'm going to talk about 2013's Frankenstein's Army, directed by Richard Rophorst.
Interesting.
Are you guys familiar with that one?
Nope.
I haven't seen it, but it's been in the news recently, and I'll touch on why after you talk about it.
Sounds good. So it is a found footage film. The premise is it's World War II, and a squad of Russian soldiers venture behind enemy lines in Nazi Germany because there is what was it? Can't remember the word, and I had it a second ago. A distress call that they're trying to answer, and they're trying to find them. And they have a camera because reasons. And what they end up discovering, it's not really a spoiler, but what they've discovered is the Nazis have employed the ancestor of Victor Frankenstein. And he's been designing these insanely creative cyborg zombies. And it's not just like Terminator skulls. I'm talking there's a guy who's got like a warplane for his stomach and head, which is the giant propeller. There's like this hammerhead zombie, like a shark. And there's like a mosquito zombie, man. It's really, they really went above and beyond with these creative creature designs. And the reason I love this film so much, and I always suggested, is because a lot of it, a majority of it, in fact, was done in camera. It's all practical effects, and you can really tell. It is fantastic. It doesn't get enough love, I don't think, and I'm always preaching it. Go check out Frankenstein's Army. Chris, why is this in the news recently? What's going on?
Well, it's nothing big necessarily. It's just I hadn't really heard about this, but I've until about the past month, because the latest Resident Evil game came out, Resident Evil 8. Mm-hmm. And there's a pretty big boss in the game that the filmmakers of Frankenstein's Army are claiming that the studio for Resident Evil stole their design, because it's a boss that had, and I'll send the pictures to you, and it's identical, of a guy with essentially a big giant plane propeller as a head and body. And I never heard about it until like articles were like, hey, check this out, it looks exactly the same.
Oh my god.
And so yeah, to me, I mean, I'm not gonna get into any legal stuff. It looks like the same exact design, but also it introduced me into this weird little movie, and just watching the trailer looked like a lot of fun. Like I do want to check it out.
Good. Yeah. Check it out, it's so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll check that out too. Okay, so mine is a movie from 2014.
Ooh.
It's I wonder if you're gonna guess it. It's a movie that it's on Netflix. It came onto my radar. I think I was reading an article about lesser known horror flicks that are worth checking out. It's a movie called Creep, and I am a big fan of this movie. There are only two people in the film. It's Mark Duplass, who did, of course, Safety Not Guaranteed. He's been in a couple other things. It's Mark Duplass and a guy named Patrick Bryce. They kind of wrote it together. Patrick Bryce directed it. And Patrick Bryce is like sort of the cameraman. I don't think he ever actually fully appears on camera. It's mostly just Mark Duplass. And the basic, it's kind of a mumblecore movie in that they sort of had their story, but they're sort of improvising the dialogue as they go along. And the basic premise is Patrick Bryce's character sees an ad on Craigslist for a videographer for some guy who wants him to like just document him for the day. And so he goes to visit, I think his name is Joseph, played by Mark Duplass, at his sort of cabin in the forest. And he's saying, my wife is pregnant, but I have terminal cancer. I want you to just hang out with me for the day, make a film about it. So, my unborn child will have an idea of who I am. And throughout the movie, like Joseph is he's oversharing personal information. He's kind of close talking. He's getting a little bit weirder. And very quickly we find out that like this guy is not who he says he is. The movie's super short. I think it's like an hour and 14 minutes. It's not violent in any way, but I found this film like profoundly disturbing. It's, most horror movies, I watch them even if they scare me, which they don't often, but even if they do, once it's over, I'm fine. I don't have trouble going to sleep that night, whatever. There is a moment at the end of this film, and it's really all down to a sound effect that I thought was going to be something like this. And it was just something like this really subtle little thing. And that final shot of the movie, or almost final shot, like that took me like a couple weeks to shake off.
Ooh.
I love this movie. I rewatched it again a couple months ago. Still dig it as much as I ever have. They did a sequel a couple years later. It's not nearly as good. It's got some good stuff. It's still Mark Duplass, but it's not as good. I mean, again, it's found footage, so automatically it's not for everybody. It's mumblecore, so automatically it's not for everybody. It's not violent for a horror movie, but it's a short watch. I absolutely love this flick, so that is my recommendation.
Right on.
Fancy.
It's been on my watch list for a while because I've heard about it and I knew the premise and who was in it, and it was one of those things where I think I saw it. I see it on Netflix a lot, that and its sequel, or on Shudder. It was on the streaming service Shudder, and I'm always like, I'll watch it soon. I'll watch it, and I just keep putting it off. But I think I should finally just like sit down and watch it because from everything that I've heard, I imagine I'm gonna like it. It's just one of those things where it's like, I know I'm gonna like this, but I'll watch it tomorrow, and then tomorrow never comes.
Yeah, no, Mark Duplass is like really creepy in it. He's really
nice.
good.
Nice.
Andris, have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay. All right. Well, I think so let's go back through Man Bites Dog, Frankenstein's Army, and Creep. Recommendations from all of us to all of you.
Yay.
So that is the show for today. As per usual, we want to thank you guys very much for watching. Like I said, we want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, share it around with your friends if you wouldn't mind. Of course, if you want to discuss any of the topics we talked about today, obviously jump into the comments below. Tell us what you think. If you've seen any of these movies, if you like them, I do read all the comments. I do try and respond to as many of them as I can. So don't think your thoughts are going unread, I should say. Before we sign off, Chris, where can people follow your work online?
On Instagram, I have a handle called Art of Light and Shadow. It's sort of a daily film blog of everything that I'm watching. In addition, I'm doing a pretty fun Best Directors tournament right now where it's all essentially user submitted. It's all user voting through polls on the story. It's a lot of fun, and people get into pretty heated debates about it. So check it out.
On the internet? No.
On the internet. Art of Light and Shadow.
Andris?
Do a YouTube search for Cheap Thrills and Unspeakable Terror. I do reviews of obscure sci-fi and horror from the dawn of cinema to the modern era.
And of course, we just, Andris is going to be moving very soon. So we just want to say goodbye to Andris's white walls. They will be missed.
Goodbye, white wall.
It's been nice blending in, but it's going to be different after this.
What did you say the new ones were? They're pink, right?
They're like a seashell pink, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not 15, so I'm cool with it.
That's right.
Fine. Yeah,
that's right.
You're secure in your masculinity.
Of course, you guys can obviously follow my work here on YouTube, Courtshake, or follow me on Instagram and Twitter, also at Courtshake. I don't post a lot, but I do occasionally. I should get back to it more than I do. Once again, we want to thank you guys for watching. Of course, you can always check out our podcast, audio only versions, I should say, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and hopefully a couple more services coming up. Andris will be away next week, but Chris and I will be back. As I say every week, don't know what we're going to be talking about, but we'll figure it out. So
Loki.
Thank you guys. Oh, right. Loki, of course. I'm hoping to get screeners for that. I really hope to get screeners for that.
Ooh.
We'll see. But yeah, so we'll be talking Loki and whatever else. We'll see. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye,
Take
everyone.
care, everybody.
Later.